Hello and welcome to Politics Today. Now that Theresa May's Chequers plan is in crisis, we'll be asking where should the government go now in terms of Brexit? And to answer this important question, I'm joined by Olive Snelling, chairperson of the Christian Broadcasting Council, and Peter McAvenna, researcher in the House of Lords. So welcome to the programme. Firstly, I'll start off with you, Peter, because Prime Minister Theresa May seems to go from one crisis to another. She was hoping that her Chequers plan would be accepted by the EU as a compromise, but we saw at the EU gathering in Salzburg that was clearly rejected. Why was the Chequers plan rejected? And can you explain to our viewers as well why it seems that everyone is against this Chequers plan, whether that's from our own party or the European Party, the Remainers and also the Brexiteers?
Well, I think Chequers' plan was certainly a compromise, a compromise too far for both wings of the party. Obviously, she's trying to keep those who don't want Brexit with those who are Brexiteers in the party together. And as with most Conservative governments, it is about keeping the party together. But I think she's gone into this completely the wrong way. She's gone into the negotiations without the confidence you would expect. As the leader of the fifth largest economy in the world, you're there sitting on the table as an equal. But she's gone in, I think, with her begging bowl, expecting them to do what she has pleaded with them to do. And when she's been on the TV giving interviews, it sounds like a pleading, a begging, imploring them to do something, instead of sitting with them and realising that we have a large economy. If you look at the trade, Europe's economy is big, and therefore we want to trade well, we want to get on well. But she's just approached this completely the wrong way, begging them, and it's like going to the playground bully and asking for something, and she gets hit, and she gets up again, begging, she gets hit. And that's seemingly what's happened, that most of the EU, well, not most, Macron and Merkel, they don't really want to give her a great deal. And because she's gone in on her knees pleading, they've just rejected that.
And Olive, from your perspective, it comes across as a bit of naivety on behalf of Prime Minister Theresa May that she could expect a very, very good deal from the EU, knowing that Brexit actually puts Europe into a position where it faces an existential threat. Because if Britain gets a good deal, then what's to stop other EU members from getting a good deal? So was she naive in thinking that she would get support from the European Union?
I don't think Theresa May is naive. I think that it's well calculated. But if we think about what the Bible has to say about matters, political or otherwise, your yea should be yea and your nay should be nay. And what the Chequers was promising, or what was holding out to people, was to be in it but not of it, to have a certain trade agreements and on certain aspects of trade, and yet not be party to any of what went with it, have no say whatsoever. I mean, it really was an absolutely hopeless chance of actually getting any agreement. And guess what? She didn't get it. And so therefore, I'm not at all surprised, but I don't think that it is naivety. I think that she is stuck between a rock and a hard place. The whole question of the Irish border is one which obviously exercises her and everybody else extremely, and she does not want to have a hard border. So there are all of these incredible manoeuvrings to try not to have a hard border, but between Eire and Northern Ireland, or between Ireland and England. And it really just isn't, it isn't working very well. That's my feeling on it, not naivety.
OK, let's have a look at Prime Minister Theresa May now, talking after her failure at the EU summit in Salzburg.
We have to face up to the fact that, despite the progress we have made, there are two big issues where we remain a long way apart. Yesterday, Donald Tusk said our proposals would undermine the single market. He didn't explain how in any detail or make any counter-proposal. So we are at an impasse. If the EU believe I will, they are making a fundamental mistake. Anything which fails to respect the referendum or which effectively divides our country in two, would be a bad deal. And I have always said, no deal is better than a bad deal. Even worse, Northern Ireland would effectively remain in the customs union and parts of the single market, permanently separated economically from the rest of the UK by a border down the Irish Sea. Parliament has already unanimously rejected this idea. Northern Ireland is an integral part of the United Kingdom, in line with the principle of consent as set out clearly in the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. It is something I will never agree to.
And there we go. We had Prime Minister Theresa May talking after that meeting she had with the EU leaders, who showed a united front in Salzburg. Now, there has been growing speculation, certainly with the national newspapers, regarding a snap general election in November, primarily to strengthen Theresa May's position and also then to prevent a coup against her. Now, surely if that happens, that this whole Brexit plan and everything else is going to be a disaster, because who could guarantee that Theresa May would get elected? Well, re-elected, sorry. Well,
exactly. I don't think anyone in the country really wants a general election. We expect our leaders to get on with it. You vote in a party, they form a government, and they make decisions for the best of the country, and you expect them to get on with it. Now, she's got herself in a mess simply because there are splits in the Conservative Party, and she should really look back and see the mess the party got themselves in for calling the last general election, which was a snap election, which got us nowhere and meant that the Conservatives in effect, didn't have a majority, and were propped up by the DUP from Northern Ireland. So I think it would be a disaster to have another general election, and I don't think it would actually give us any clear idea of the way forward. I think that she is there as the Prime Minister to implement the will of the people that was in the referendum in 2016, and she needs to get on with it. And to have a general election will just confuse the matters, and then let's say we again don't have one party which has the majority, so again do then have a coalition, and what happens with Europe? Do talks then start from scratch? So you're back to square one, you start all over again, and it's just a mess, and it's simply a mess because she hasn't known where she's going, and she should have just repealed the 1972 Act and scrapped it, and we would have left under any treaty we would have withdrawn. That would have been the easiest way. And Olive, in terms of calling a general election, and she's saying that this would strengthen her hand and hopefully then increase her majority in Parliament, in which she could then push through legislation regarding Brexit. But we saw that when we had the snap general election last year, that Brexit really didn't feature much in the general election at all. So isn't there a great danger, however much she wants to appeal as on a Eurosceptic platform, that the general election and the campaign itself could turn out against anything other than Brexit?
I think she's on a hiding to nothing, quite honestly, because a general election, as Peter has said, I think would be absolutely catastrophic. I think she would lose absolutely hands down, and then we would find ourselves with a Labour government. I don't think that she would come through with any credit at all in a general election. And I think that it's showing, actually. It's showing in her face. It's showing in her demeanour. It's showing in everything that she says, that she is wounded, and she's fighting from a weak position. In many ways, I feel sorry for her, because you can see somebody's rather like somebody, a bull being gored and then waiting for the matadors to come in and finish the animal off. But I think that it is sad. I think that the opinion in Britain has changed enormously. So the fact that she's thinking that there might be some hope in triggering an election, because only she can do it, I think is not going to do her any good at all, nor the whole question of Brexit, because we still would be in an awful mess if she lost completely.
Peter, I mean, I think our nation's crying out for a strong, kind of righteous leader. But if we did have a strong, righteous leader emerge as someone to succeed Prime Minister Theresa May, do you think that the problems are so big that they couldn't tackle them? I mean, I'll give you an example. If we had someone like Margaret Thatcher as Prime Minister now, do you think she can make a success of Brexit and everything that's going on?
I worry that it's gone on so far that the EU are treating Britain, as Olive said, like a wounded animal and aren't taking this whole issue seriously and are expecting that if they give an awful deal, then they will be involved in reversing Brexit later on. So they're hoping to put it on hold, put it on pause for a while. And looking at the Conservative Party, I don't know who there is. I mean, the chance that the Conservative Party had to have a new leader was probably back after the Chequers deal, and there was huge argument, and that was a chance for a Jacob Rees-Mogg or a Boris Johnson, whether you agree with them or not, actually, to take the position they had in the party and to put themselves forward and challenge Theresa May. So I think that's been lost within the party, and people are sitting down hoping that they can just make some positivity out of the mess they're in. But I don't think there's the fight left at the moment. I think that opportunity has been missed. So, and again, I look around and I do not know who there is who has that that stance, that Christian stance on many issues, who is strong enough in the party, but also in a way has that killer instinct politically, who can see what needs to be done and go for it. And I don't know if we have that person with those qualities wrapped up into one.
And Olive, there's been a lot of speculation that to appease her political party, the Conservative Party, the latest thing they're suggesting is that Britain joined the European Economic Area, just like Norway has, but we'd still be part of the customs union. And then we're in that, they say, within a couple of years, we could then renegotiate a trade deal later and get everything sorted out. Do you think such a plan could work, and would this be acceptable to the British public, particularly those who voted for Brexit and the referendum back in June of 2016?
Well, it seems to me confronted by a number of choices, which would and could have included a Norwegian-style agreement. That, you know, the time has slipped away. That might have been some kind of a possibility of that right from the very start. But now I think that it's pretty well impossible to negotiate back to that position with any credibility, both from her own party and from within the EU itself. And the EU is in no mood at the moment, I fear, because I think that they are on a bandwagon now, and there is a kind of kill Theresa May sort of instinct abroad, and that's what they intend doing, I fear, even though the European Union itself is in such a terrible mess that it's very hard to understand. But I think that your mentioning of the sort of the playground bully is a good one, because I think that Barnier and co represent that, you know, the big thug in the playground, and they are enjoying it like anything, and so they're giving her a jolly good thumping, and making her look disgraced on a world stage, which I think is really awful. And actually, what that Salzburg gathering was appalling. On the stage in Salzburg, the scene of the Sound of Music, people just escape over the hills to escape the Nazis. My goodness, I wonder how Angela Merkel was thinking about all that.
And Peter, many of the Brexiteers like Rees-Mogg and also David Davis and Boris Johnson are now favouring another alternative, and that's the Canada Plus plan. Can you explain to our viewers what that is and what that would represent?
Well, it's one of many options, and that's been discussed, and the IEA, the Institute of Economic Affairs, produced the A+ plan. which was 150 pages, which I haven't got all the way through as yet. But
what page are you on?
Me 2/3 the way through. There is an executive summary at the beginning, so. But that is, again, proposing a looser model than the Norway model would be. The Norway model is very much that you're a rule taker but not a rule maker. So you take what's thrown at you, you pay for the privilege of taking those rules, but you don't have any engagement, you don't sit at the table and decide what those rules are. So you're tied to what you must accept without having any input into that. Where the Canada model would be a much freer model, would cover a lot more, certainly on the trade aspect, and what it doesn't cover, you'd fall back on WTO rules. So that certainly is one, and again, with the Brexiteers producing that with the IEA, it's looks like a very sound document, well-researched document, and is something that should be taken seriously. And I think the Brexiteers have always been criticised to say, you want us to be out of Europe, but you're not proposing what that out means. And this actually produces something which says, this is a roadmap, this is where we want to go. And I think it's the first time that, in effect, the Tory party have produced something which says to the people, this is an option, this is the best option, I think we should go for that. But whether or not the EU take any notice of that or not, because I think the EU are very good at brickmanship, and at the 11th hour, at the 11th minute, the 11th hour, they will then back down and come to an agreement. But that's not how these negotiations should be done, because you have businesses, you have people's lives are on hold, they're not knowing what's going to happen, and the EU need to grow up a little bit and realise they need to plan ahead. But certainly the Canada Plus model is a great starting point, and certainly could be the basis of any agreement.
And Olive, there's been a lot of media speculation that we could actually come out of the EU with a big bump, with no agreement in place whatsoever. That would affect travel into Europe, affect businesses into Europe. Now, do you think that is a real possibility?
Well, don't forget that we are a nation of moaners, of whingers and moaners. And whenever a negative kind of outlook can be expressed, then that really is being expressed right now. And everybody's climbing onto the bandwagon. And I think it's absolutely disgraceful. I mean, there's hardly anybody who's prepared to put it forward anything positive. So we're going to lose, we're going to suffer, we're going to, jobs are on the line, everything to do with the satisfactory running of the country and the economy is on the line, and they are loving it, and so they lay it on absolutely thick. And having worked in the media all my working life, I know that negative mindset is one which is absolutely overwhelming when it comes to a situation like this, because they're not going to allow a glimmer of light anywhere to be shown. They're just going to bang on how terrible it's going to be and frighten the horses.
Absolutely. And isn't partly one of the major problems with this whole issue to do with Brexit is there are too many of the liberal elites' interests within the European Union. So political interests, financial, personal gain interests. So they've got a lot to lose personally if we come out of the European Union. And this is why, again, we see with the Labour Party, there's demands from within the Labour Party to have another referendum, and that seems to be gaining momentum as well. But with this, it almost seems as if our democracy is under threat, that there are powerful individuals who are working against the will of the people, and certainly against the referendum result, to try and drag us back into Europe.
Well, there's certainly political forces behind it and big business forces behind it. The political forces are that Macron, Merkel and others do not want this project to fail. They put everything into this in Europe, and it must not fail because their credibility is on the line. That's one thing. You've got big business. Big business want cheap labour. I remember during the referendum knocking on someone's door, and we were having a conversation. He said, Brexit, we don't want Brexit, we don't want Brexit. And I was asking why. He said, he's a business owner. He wants cheap labour. He says, I'll be honest, mate, I want to get workers in. I want them cheap because that's my business. Bottom line, makes money. And that's what it's about. And for big business, it is about making money. It's not about people, it's not about anything else. It's purely about money in the bank account. I think because of the big business and because of politicians behind that, there is a lot of interest to keeping this going. And the man at the bottom, small businesses, they get squeezed in this big argument. So I think unless politicians listen to, well, they did have a referendum and the people spoke, and they need to remind themselves the response of the people, small businesses, what they want, and just get on with it and do it.
And Olive, if we turn attention a little bit to the Labour Party, we have this bizarre situation where the majority of the parliamentary Labour Party actually want to remain in the European Union, and that's why they're calling for a second referendum. But the leadership, we can actually now officially call it the communist leadership of the Labour Party, want Brexit, primarily because they want to align themselves with Mother Russia. So again, it's not only the Conservative Party that have divisions over this issue, it's also the Labour Party. So how do you think a Labour government under Jeremy Corbyn would fare with the Brexit negotiations?
I think that he would find himself with egg on his face a lot, because he would have to backtrack on what the Labour Party and the Labour leadership has already said, because they declared way back months ago that they were in favour of us leaving the EU, and therefore I don't see Jeremy Corbyn having any difficulty in going backtracking, having said that. But I mean, I do think that they would find themselves politically in a very difficult place. They too are between a rock and a hard place. I mean, in that if they were to concede to the demands of the ordinary man in the street, and particularly the Labour supporter, then they would go for a second referendum. I'm sure that they are looking to that to be a way out. But you can't go on having referenda in order to get the result that you want. And therefore, the fact that it has been declared anti-democratic completely, to just dismiss what was a perfectly good and straightforward referendum in 2016, they would have to do some fancy footwork to try to get around that. And I don't know how they would do it.
Yeah. And Peter, I mean, talking about Jeremy Corbyn and having listened to a few of the speeches at the Labour Party conference, it almost seems as if they would take Britain back to the 1970s with Labour policy, hard left Labour policies of the 70s, particularly economic policy. So how would that fare with Brexit going forward, with a new British independence that was wanting to adopt policies that are 40 years out of date?
Well, I've tried not to listen to most speeches. Most of them I've had to turn off because I get angry at, so it's not pleasant viewing. But it's a strange economic model they're proposing of, well, they've talked about renationalising things, which is a wonderful idea. But you give something to a private company to run because they supposedly have the experience and expertise to run that. If you take it in-house, then what do? I mean, in London, the Labour Mayor of London talks about taking all the train companies under TfL, Transport for London, under national control. But he needs to realise that he doesn't necessarily have the resources to do that. So it's all very good making these huge statements, but the implications of it, or Labour talking about workers having 10% share in a company or taking a percentage of profits and giving it, which is wonderful. But if you're a business trying to work hard, pay all your taxes, look after your workers, treat everyone fairly and make a profit on top of that, it actually can be quite difficult. And what Labour seem to come along and say is that we're going to hit you with well, they're at 12% tax immediately, which is 10% of the company we give to individuals and 2% we're going to give to good causes. Well, it all sounds good until you realise that if a business does not make money, it then will go bust. It cannot employ those people. They lose their jobs. So he's not looking at the bigger picture. And for someone who said Venezuela was the great model, economic model, I think that he should step back and say, I was wrong. But I don't think Jeremy Corbyn has ever said I was wrong. I mean, it's something he needs to learn to say.
We can't say sorry either. Olive, you know, if we look at what's happening in the United States with President Trump, and ever since he's come to the presidency, America's growth rate has grown from around 1.5% to 5% GDP growth rate, which is incredible comparing other Western economies in the world. Wouldn't it make more sense if Theresa May just bit the bullet and aligned herself closer with the Trump administration in the US and to have that economic benefit from being close to the United States?
I don't think that Donald Trump would swallow it. I think that it's one thing for her to say, OK, and try to cozy up to Donald Trump and the USA. But, I mean, Trump got a less than enthusiastic welcome. I mean, a very, very woo kind of welcome into this country, which I think was a disgrace, quite honestly. But I don't think that she would get anywhere with it. And if she was to try that, I'm not exactly sure what Trump would say and how that would work out, because yes, they do. They have a flourishing economy, and in spite of the things that Trump says, which sometimes makes your hair stand on end, but nevertheless, he's been very effective in that particular area and in many others. We have to say, I don't think that Theresa May would actually get. I think she would get short shrift.
Yeah. So we're down to less than 2 minutes of programme. So in summing up, Peter, I mean, in terms of our viewers watching this programme, you know, what advice can you give them about how to pray and what we should be looking out for in terms of Brexit and praying for our government?
Well, I think a simple thing. I'm just back from the UKIP party conference of the Conservatives, so I have theirs at the end of the week. Labour also having theirs. And I think that we need to pray for the Christian groups at each of those conferences, that they can speak of Christ where they are. We need to pray for the Christian MPs, that they will be strong, that they will be able to speak for Christ, even if it goes against what their party believes, that they will put their relationship to Christ, their Christian faith, before their party politics. And we just need to pray for Theresa May to rediscover her Christian faith. She talks about her being a daughter of a vicar. You know, God can step in and he can reveal himself once more to her. For the European leaders, the same. Unless these people meet Christ, unless they have the transformation, then nothing will happen. So I think to pray for Europe, which sometimes seems a spiritually dark place, to pray for those leaders to have an encounter and for that to change. And I think that's something we can all pray for and we can all be in agreement with, no matter where we come from on this issue.
Excellent. I just want to thank Peter and Olive for being my guests on Politics Today. Thank you so much. And I just want to thank you for watching this programme today. We know that Brexit has created a number of problematic problems and issues, and this is why it's important that we pray that our government would have wisdom and that it would see us through these very difficult waters as we reach out and for independence. So thank you for watching Politics Today.